I've known a lot of people who have told me that they are trying to learn Spanish, tons of people that I know, and a lot of them who don't actually have like necessarily yet the ability to speak conversationally or more in depth than just like a casual conversation in Spanish have been learning it for a very long time, and so many of them listen to a ton of music in Spanish. And I think that there's kind of this idea that if you listen to music in Spanish, you are going to absorb the language and it's going to help you. And I think that this is kind of true in a certain way. But the big issue with it is, and that the kind of factor that can be sort of misleading is that you can't just listen to it and expect for that to make a difference for you. You might pick up a couple pieces of vocab here and there, but if you're not actively spending time analyzing it and interpreting it and trying to understand the not just like the semantic meaning of each line, but the syntactical meaning, meaning like how is this sentence formed? What tense is it in? What is the subject? What's the object? What's the indirect object? What verb is being used? Why is it being conjugated in that tense? How does it relate to the other clause in this sentence? If you're not doing this kind of work, honestly, I don't think that it might help with a little bit of an understanding of Spanish, and like I said, pick up a couple new words here and there, but it's not going to assist you in getting to any kind of level of being able to speak and certainly not like any fluency, because tragically you can't, unless you have like a super computer brain, you're not going to learn a new language simply passively, right? And just in the fun ways, you have to do the boring parts too. And so what I'm going to try to do is maybe make this video, and perhaps if people like it, more videos in the future, breaking down song lyrics in that way, the way that I used to do and still do to this day to continue learning Spanish, very analytically, very focused on grammar and structurally, to try to make the not just understand what it means, but how it gets to deliver the message that it wants to deliver using the rules of Spanish, right? So that you can help to not only just learn words in Spanish, but internalize the natural logic of the language so that you can use those words to then generate your own thoughts in the future, rather than having to memorize a script of everything you'd ever want to say. You can just intuit and in the moment generate your own ideas. I'm also sick. So I wanted to do for this one the song Baile Inolvidable by Bad Bunny, because for one, Super Bowl's coming up and it's exciting, and so I know everybody's into Bad Bunny right now. Two, it's a terrific song. Lyrically, it's beautiful, and instrumentally, it's also beautiful. Maybe even arguably even better instrumentally. But most importantly, because it's a very accessible song for language learners. Aside from the caveat that Bad Bunny's accent is very difficult to understand, the grammar of this song and the vocabulary are actually pretty introductory. You don't have to know all that much. There is one use of a subjunctive mood conjugation, and we'll cover it, but there's only one, right? And so the one really advanced thing is just that. Outside of that, there's not really that much that's very advanced in here. Everything else is present simple tense, I think one future simple tense, present perfect, and then a couple of instances of past preterite and a lot of instances of past imperfect. Really just those 5 things. And the past imperfect was what I really wanted to focus on in particular, but that's why. It's probably like an intermediate level song, outside of the fact that Bad Bunny's Spanish is so freaking hard to understand because of his accent. But just written down on paper, it's pretty accessible. So let's get started. First, we're gonna start with this first line here. Pensaba que contigo iba a envejecer. Let's break it down a little bit. We have 3 verbs in here. 2 are being conjugated and 1 is just an infinitive. Pensaba is a conjugation of pensar, which means to think. Iba is a conjugation of ir, which means to go. Envejecer. Envejecer, you may not recognize. You can see the VEJ in the middle, which comes from the same root as the word viejo, which you might have heard before, probably more commonly. Viejo means old or old person. Envejecer means to grow old. So, pensaba que contigo iba a envejecer. Pensar is being conjugated with this ABA at the end. The reason for that is because it is an imperfect tense conjugation. What is the imperfect tense? I'm going to take a second to explain it because we're going to be using it a lot in this song, and we want to definitely understand the difference between the two past tenses in Spanish. So, in English, we have basically just one past tense that we use to express many different ideas. And so sometimes all of these ideas tend to feel like they're the same idea in our minds, but it's very valuable to separate those two ideas. Well, two of the many ideas in your mind, specifically this preterite idea and past imperfect idea. So the example I always like to use is, imagine you said, when I was young, I went to the park. This could be two different ideas depending on what follows it. If I were to say, when I was young, I went to the park and broke my leg, I am now referring to a specific instance, even if I'm not specifying the time or anything. Hopefully it's just one specific instance. Hopefully I'm not breaking my leg every day that I go to the park. But if I say, when I was a kid, I went to the park and I broke my leg, that is an example of the past preterite, where the number of instances of the thing in the past is being either reasonably strongly implied or just outright stated, right? But if I were to take that phrase and follow it with something different, when I was a kid, I went to the park every day. Not, and broke my leg, every day. When I was a kid, I went to the park every day. I'm no longer specifying a certain number of instances. I'm not even trying to, right? I'm talking about something that I did all the time, that I did routinely. This is an example of the past imperfect. So this first sentence here is using the past imperfect tense. It is not saying, there was this one time last night or last week that I thought. It's saying I thought in a very routinely vague past sense of the word, right? So it's more like, I just thought that things were different, right? That's the imperfect form of this. So, pensaba que, I thought that. Let's get the glare out of there, geez. Pensaba que, contigo, with you. I thought that with you, iba. Iba is the past imperfect conjugation of ir. So, iba, it would be, I was going. I thought that with you, I was going. Then we have this auxiliary a, which is whenever we do what we would call in English the future with going to. Like, I'm going to do something, not I'm going to the mall, but I'm going to do something. I'm going to drive to the mall, right? Followed by a verb. I'm going to verb. We have the same idea. Ir a, infinitive verb. Iba a envejecer. I thought that with you, I was going to envejecer, to grow old. I thought that with you, I was going to grow old. I underlined this a because in the song, it sounds more like he's singing, Pensaba que contigo iba a envejecer. Iba a envejecer. The is like rolled through it, and so it doesn't really sound very audible. And I would go as far as to say, in most speech, this is kind of gonna get like omitted, especially if you have a verb before it that ends in a, and even more especially if it's followed by an infinitive verb that begins with a vowel. So iba a envejecer, but written you cannot change this. You have to say iba a envejecer. En otra vida, en otro mundo podrá ser. En otra vida, in another life. En otro mundo, in another world. Podrá ser. So, podrá ser is a little bit weird. Ser, of course, we know means to be. Podrá is a future simple tense conjugation of the verb poder, meaning to be able. So, it will be. Doesn't quite make sense in English. In another life, in another world, it will be. If you saw the video I made before about how to use the future tenses to express speculation, you may know this already, but if not, this future tense is not actually implying the future. Bad Bunny is not saying in another life, in another world, it will be that I will grow old with you. He's not, hypothesizing about the possibility of an infinite number of worlds and possible worlds out there. This future tense is simply just speculating and saying, maybe it would have been, maybe it will be, maybe. En otra vida, en otro mundo, podrá ser. In another life, in another world, maybe. So, I thought that I was going to grow old with you. In another life, in another world, maybe. But not in this one. That last part I added in, that's just, implied. En esta, solo queda irme un día. So, this one's a little bit weird. En esta, we have a comma after it because it's an introductory clause. So he's contrasting, en otra vida, maybe I'll grow old with you. In another life, maybe I'll grow old with you. Podrá ser. But in this one, en esta, in this one, solo, only, queda, irme un día. Let's break this down in a good order. So let's first we'll just talk about this. The un día we know means one day. Irme. Irme comes from the verb ir, which means to go, as we covered before. But it's one of those weird verbs where if you make it reflexive, meaning that the subject and the object are the same thing, it actually changes the meaning a little bit. It changes it from being to go to leave, specifically to leave. The lyric would not work if it was just to go. And then queda. Queda comes from the verb quedar, Queudar. And quedar is one of those verbs in Spanish where if you look it up on a translator, it's going to give you a certain thing, like the Google Translate app. It will probably tell you like to stay or to remain. But it's one of those verbs where don't lock yourself into one meaning of it. Please don't, because it can be used in so many different ways. And instead, the way that you should focus it in your mind is just recognize quedar is one of those verbs that I'm going to have to spend a long time building a relationship with and learning all of the different ways that it can be used. But in this case, I would translate it to something like to remain or to be left over, right? So, in another life, in another world, maybe I can grow old with you. But contrasting, in this one, the only thing that remains, only left over, only remaining is irme un día, to leave one day. So effectively what we're saying is, I thought that I would grow old with you. In another life, in another world, maybe. In this one, the only thing left for me is to leave one day, to die. Very poetically tragic way of expressing, grief of the loss of a relationship. And then we could follow it into this next line. Y solamente verte en el atardecer. And only, solamente is the adverbial form of solo. So in English, we use only to be, an adjective and an adverb, but we have to split it up in Spanish. Y solamente verte en el atardecer. Verte means to see you. Ver means to see, and that object pronoun te gets added on because it's to see you. And only see you in the atardecer. If you don't know the term atardecer, you can listen to the other Bad Bunny song, Otro Atardecer. But you can also recognize tarde in there. Tarde means late, or it also means afternoon. La tarde. Atardecer means a sunset. So, in this life, all that remains for me is to leave one day, to die, and simply see you in the sunset. So, this relationship's over. Up next, we have, let's make sure we can read this here. I might bring this in a little bit. Let's see. So, the glare is horrible. Let's see. Where are we? Okay. Si me ven solo y triste, no me hablen. Si, because it does not have the accent mark over the I, is not meaning yes, it's meaning if. Si me ven solo, if you see me alone, ven is the present tense conjugation of ver, V-E-R, turns to V-E-N because it's saying we're doing a present tense conjugation of the second person plural. So if you all see me, si me ven alone y triste, if you see me alone and sad, don't speak to me. No me hablen. You might be wondering, if you're a little bit newer to Spanish conjugation, why is the verb hablar ending with an en instead of an an, it's because one of the rules of command statements or the imperative mood in Spanish is that when we have an AR verb, and it's a negative command, meaning don't do something rather than do this, don't do this, you switch the A to an E. And if it's an ER or an IR verb, you would switch it to an A. And for most positive commands, it does this as well, the only exception being a second person positive command, a second person singular positive command. Don't worry too much about that though right now. That could be a topic for a different video. But basically, this is just a command. No me hablen. If you see me alone and sad, don't speak to me. Then we repeat the same first clause. If you see me, conditional clause, if you see me alone and sad, soy culpable. I am culpable. I am to blame. I am the one guilty here. This is my fault, right? Soy culpable. Then we go into this line here. La vida es una fiesta que un día termina. Now, note with this, you may know this already, but in Spanish, when we talk about general concepts, even if those concepts don't need to be specified because they're so general that there's logically only one of them, those concepts have to be introduced with a definite article, meaning like in English that would be the, or a would be a definite article. The would be the definite article. So you're defining the specific one. It's like a measure of specificity in English. But in Spanish, when we're talking about big concepts, we still have to use this definite article. Like instead of saying I like music, to say in English, it doesn't make sense to us. It doesn't seem like we would have to say I like the music, because you don't need to specify music because there's only one music. There might be different types of music, but there's only one music, right? There's only one art. There's only one philosophy, even if all of these things have different types of them in different categories below that umbrella. The umbrella itself is only one. But in Spanish, you would still have to say me gusta la música, me gusta el arte, me gusta la filosofía. You have to put this definite article on there, including here, la vida. We're not saying the life. We're just talking about life in general. Life, la vida. You've probably heard the expression, la vida es complicada. Life is complicated. You don't say, vida es complicada, la vida es complicada. La vida es una fiesta. Life is a party. Que un día termina. Life is a party that one day ends. And then we have this really important line, the titular line of the song. Make sure I can see it. Y fuiste tú mi baile inolvidable. So let's break this down. The subject of this sentence is tú, you. We have this conjunction, y, and. So we're continuing this line from this first line here. You, and you. Then we have this verb, fuiste. You might recognize the verb fuiste. It's one of those unique past preterite conjugations because it's representative of two different infinitive verbs. Fuiste you may know that the two verbs ir and ser share the same past preterite conjugations. So if you want to say yo fui, that can mean I went, or it can mean I was. And fuiste is the past preterite conjugation of tú. So what it's saying is, and you were. And you were. Mi, which is our possessive adjective. Mi baile inolvidable. Baile means a dance. You probably recognize the verb bailar. And if we end it with an E instead, baile, it means a noun. So a dance. Not to dance, but rather a dance. Mi baile inolvidable. Inolvidable comes from the root of the verb, the infinitive verb olvidar, which means to forget. So you can probably intuit that inolvidable means unforgettable. So to break this all down, very beautiful line. La vida es una fiesta que un día termina y fuiste tú mi baile inolvidable. Life is a party that one day ends, and you were my unforgettable dance. Very poetic. Up next, let's go into the chorus that is sung by the actual chorus. Try to hold this up. I really gotta figure out how to light this better so that there's not so much glare in the future. Let's see, where are we? Okay, So, no te puedo olvidar. We just learned olvidar from inolvidable, means to forget. No te puedo olvidar, because we have this te in there, that does not mean that the subject is you. Te is the object pronoun for you. So we can intuit that the I is the subject's first person singular, because puedo is a conjugation of the first person singular. No te puedo olvidar. I can't forget you. No te puedo borrar. I can't erase you. Borrar means to erase, but very commonly it gets used in a metaphorical sense to mean erase someone from your memory or erase something from your memory. In a lot of songs about despecho, heartbreak, you will hear this in Spanish, borrar, being used. No te puedo olvidar, no te puedo borrar. I can't forget you, I can't erase you. Tú me enseñaste. So, subject of this next sentence is tú, you. Then we have this me, because that means it is an object pronoun of me. So, you did something to me. And let's find out what they did. Enseñaste. That's what you did. This comes from the verb. You can probably figure this out because if you've learned preterite conjugations, you probably know that if you see a word ending in aste, that means it is a past preterite conjugation of an AR verb, because of that A in there. And if it was an ISTE, it would be an IR or an ER verb. So we can probably figure this out just from reverse engineering it, that this infinitive verb would be enseñar. And enseñar means to teach. So it can also mean like to show how to do something, or it could even just mean like, let me show you a photo I took yesterday. I could say, te enseño una foto que tomé ayer. Te enseño. Like, you can use it for that way too. But in this case, it's more like teach or to show how. So, tú me enseñaste. You taught me. Tú me enseñaste. And then we have this preposition a. So you taught me to querer. Querer is most commonly used to mean want, but it can also mean in that same sense to love. So, tú me enseñaste a querer. You taught me to love. And then, tú me enseñaste a bailar. You taught me to love, you taught me to dance. I can't forget you. I can't forget you. I can't erase you. You taught me to love, you taught me to dance. Very beautiful. Then what do we have next? We have, get rid of the glare. Okay. This one is rather a little bit more complicated. So to break it down, and we're going to kind of start from it backwards, this 2-line section here, we have 3 different clauses. Como tú me besabas, como yo te lo hacía, and como tú me mirabas. These 3 clauses are all acting as 3 different things that collectively are doing one thing, which is described in the final clause. And we're going to actually start with the final clause. So this last clause, bellaquito me ponía. Bellaquito me ponía. The verb in this is poner. Poner. This is another one of those verbs where you will get an immediate translation if you look it up in Google Translate or something, and it's probably going to say to put, poner, to put. But don't lock yourself, just like with quedar, don't lock yourself into that. Don't let yourself fall into the trap of thinking of it as one thing, because it can mean a lot of things. And in this context, it's basically meaning, there's a very, 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 very common use of poner, which is like to transitively make something else into something, especially with emotions. So you can say, me pones loco, you're making me crazy. Me pone feliz. Me pone feliz. It makes me happy. Me puso feliz. It made me happy. And in this case, we do have that object pronoun of me. So the object of the sentence is me. Me ponía bellaquito. Ponía is being put in this past imperfect tense as well, because you may remember that except for 3 verbs in the whole language, if it's an IR or an ER verb and you're putting it in the past imperfect tense, it's just going to end in this like IA thing if it's singular, and then íamos if it's nosotros, and ian if it's ustedes or ellos or ellas, plural. So me ponía. Bellaquito me ponía. So this is saying it made me, past imperfect, it made me bellaco. The reason I'm saying bellaco and not bellaquito is because bellaquito is the diminutive form of bellaco, in the same way that gatito is the diminutive form of gato. It just kind of means like, it's just like a cuter way of saying it, a sweeter way of saying it, a way that kind of minimizes a little bit of the intensity. Bellaco means horny. So it made me horny, these three things. And now the three things are como tú me besabas, how you kissed me. Besar means to kiss, and because it's ending in this ABAS, it is also past imperfect. You might be thinking, why doesn't it end in the IA? Didn't you say that is how you indicate the past imperfect for all but three verbs? Yes, but only if they are ER or IR verbs. For AR verbs, they all end in this ABA pattern. Then you add S if it's second person, N if it's third person plural or second person plural, MOS at the end if it's first person plural. So, como tú me besabas, how you kissed me. Como yo te lo hacía, how I did it to you, meaning the same thing as it would in English, kind of implying sex, right? Como yo te lo hacía. Hacer means to do, to make. You've probably heard that verb before. And then this is the past imperfect form, hacía. And then the subject is yo of this phrase, como yo te lo hacía. Te is the indirect object, so you, and then lo would be the direct object, it. So how I did it to you. How you kissed me, how I did it to you. And then our final one is como tú me mirabas. So how you, to me, looked. M-I-R-A-R is mirar, which means to look. So how you looked at me. Como tú me mirabas, how you looked at me. Past imperfect as well. Then we've got, up next, let's see if we can tilt this down a little bit. Probably not. Okay, we'll just do this. So we have, put this on my knee. Se siente feo no tenerte cerquita. So the subject of our sentence is actually here. No tenerte cerquita. No tenerte means to not have you. This is an infinitive verb, which is why it's acting as the subject of the sentence. So no tenerte, the idea of not having you. Cerquita is another diminutive form of the word cerca. Cerca means close, to not have you close. And then we just make it diminutive, make it a little bit less intense, a little bit sweeter, a little bit cuter. No tenerte cerquita. Not having you close. Se siente feo. Se siente feo. Feo means ugly, bad, undesirable, right? Se siente is coming from the verb sentir, which means to feel. So we can think of this as like sentimientos means feelings. Sentiment, a nice sentiment in English we might say, or sentimental, right? Or sense, sensational, right? Comes from this root, sentir. And then we add this se in the front because this verb is being made reflexive. Because if we were to say simply, siente feo no tenerte cerquita, what that would imply is that the idea of no tenerte cerquita, not the idea of not having you close, feels something, but the idea can't feel something. The idea feels a certain way, and in English we use the same verb, feel, the same conjugation of that verb to express both of those two different ideas, but in Spanish we have to separate them. So we would say, se siente feo no tenerte cerquita. I'm gonna do a video about this in the future, this reflexive stuff. So if it doesn't make sense to you, don't worry. La nueva mamá bien, pero no es tu boquita. La nueva mamá bien. The new girl good. Mama, mama, mami, papi, papa. These words in Spanish are not even close to being exclusive to like your parents. It is perfectly normal to call people like mommy, mama. Don't start doing it until you've learned the nuance of it. But like plenty of my friends call me papa or papi. And it's not even like in a jokey. It's not even like in an ironic way or something. It's pretty normal. You can call, people will call their kids papi or mama. Like, so, la nueva mama bien. He's not talking about his mom. He's talking about the new girl I'm going out with. The new girl is good, pero no es tu boquita, but it's not your mouth. Boquita comes from boca, meaning mouth. It's also got that diminutive form on it. So instead of saying boca, we say boquita to make it a little bit sweeter, a little bit cuter. Pero no es tu boquita, it's not your mouth. I think that's just a weird line in both languages, to be honest. But you get what he means. It's like, the new girl is nice, but she's not you. Then we have this cool phrase here. Con cualquiera me puedo acostar, pero no con cualquiera quiero despertar. Con means with. Cualquiera means anyone. Me puedo acostar. So this is a reflexive verb because we have the same subject as the object. Me is I, and puedo is conjugated for yo, which is I. So acostar means to put to bed. If we make it reflexive, it means to go to bed, to put yourself to bed, right? To get in bed. Me puedo acostar. With anyone, I can get in bed, or with anyone, I can go to bed. But, no con cualquiera quiero despertar. But not with anyone do I want to wake up. Despertar means to wake up. So I can go to bed with anyone, but I don't want to wake up with just anybody. Solo con usted, just with you. Yo bailo con usted, I dance with you. No más con usted, only with you. And then the reason probably that he used usted here, because Bad Bunny almost always uses tú, unless he's trying to make a rhyme. He switched to usted because he wanted to rhyme with un beso donde estés. This is the most advanced four-word sentence in the entire song. So if you don't understand it, don't worry. But to go over it, un beso donde estés. Beso means a kiss. So a kiss where estés. E-S-T-E-S. The second E has an accent mark over it. This is coming from the verb estar, and you might be thinking, estar conjugated for you should be estás with an A, right? But if you switch that A for an E, it turns it from indicative mood to subjunctive mood. And if you don't know what subjunctive is, don't worry. It's a topic that you'll probably cover later on, and it's a famously difficult concept for English speakers to learn when learning Spanish. But basically, when you flop that A to an E, it means, it goes from, in this context at the very least, saying un beso donde estés, a kiss where, un beso donde estás, a kiss where you are, to un beso donde estés, a kiss wherever you are. In fact, interestingly, in Spanish, there are no words like wherever, whenever, whomever, whoever, whatever. You have to express those ideas, the ideas that those words carry, by conjugating in the subjunctive mood rather than in the indicative mood. But that's a topic for a different video. So, un beso donde estés, a kiss wherever you are, meaning I send it to you, but I don't know where you are because, we've broken up. Un beso donde estés, bebé. Y yo tenía muchas novias. Muchas novias, many girlfriends, a lot of girlfriends. Yo is the subject, and tenía is the past imperfect conjugation of tener. So you're saying, and I had a lot of girlfriends, pero como tú, ninguna. But, like you, none. I had a lot of girlfriends, but like you, none. Ninguna. Ya no tengo mi sol. No tengo mi sol. I don't have my sun. And then this word ya, which is a temporal word, meaning time-based word that expresses different things that are time-related, and it can be different in a lot of different contexts. But in this context, because whenever you have the word ya preceding a negative sentence, it means that it is expressing the idea of no longer or anymore, not anymore. Ya no tengo mi sol. I no longer have my sun. Me paso en la luna. Me paso en la luna. En la luna means in the moon. Me paso comes from the verb pasarse, a reflexive verb. When you say me paso, it means like, this is kind of a hard one to explain, and I even thought about making a video about just this expression because it's very good to know and very powerful. But it's kind of like, I spend all my time, now I'm stuck in, or I'm in this period of my life in which, whatever, right? So you're saying, I no longer have my sun, I'm stuck in the moon. I spend all my time in the moonlight, right? Something along those lines. There's not like a good, easy translation of pasarse. And then the final line, si te pienso, me tiro de una. Si does not have the accent mark over the I, so it's not yes, it's if. Si, if the subject is yo, implied, not written, because the verb is conjugated as pienso, which is a yo conjugation, and then te is the object pronoun for you. So if I think of you, because pienso is pensar, same verb. If I think of you, me tiro de una. De una means at once or right away, immediately. Me tiro is coming from this verb tirar, T-I-R-A-R, and then spelled T-I-R-O because we're conjugating it for me, for I, tiro. And then I'm putting this object pronoun me before it to make it reflexive, meaning I'm doing this to myself. And tirar, another verb that has a lot of different meanings. The first one, if you put it into a translator, it's going to say to throw, but it can also mean to shoot. And I'll let you put two and two together. What he's saying, if you put the me before that verb and you make it reflexive, it means that you're not shooting something else. You are shooting, back at you, right? If I think of you, that's what I will do to myself. And then I think there's a little bit more, but it's just a lot of repetition of other lyrics that we've already covered. So I hope that this helps. And I hope that it, at the very least, demonstrates the idea of what you should be doing with music when you listen to a song that you like. Don't just listen to it. Don't just memorize the lyrics. Take your time and figure out and analyze the sentence, and don't just like look up, lyrics genius of what does this mean in English, and then, the word atardecer, I never knew that, but it means sunset. Now I know a new word. That is good. Obviously, that's better than nothing, but if you really want to pursue fluency and not just the recognition of words and their meaning, if you want to pursue fluency, try to go for the grammatical analysis, even though it's very boring. And I'm going to try to make more videos of these and maybe make them a little bit more engaging, so that maybe you don't have to do that work. And if you want to hear a song, me to do another song, text me. Or no, it's YouTube. Comment. I'm just assuming that everybody watching this knows who I am, knows me. But probably nobody will ask for one. So if you want to, I'll probably do it. And I enjoy doing it anyway. So hope this helps. Do it with other songs, or request a song or something, and I'll make another video later.